Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to really dig into habits.
Oh, habits.
Yeah.
Everyone's got them.
Right. And we're using Atomic Habits by James Clear as our guide today.
Excellent choice. That's a good one.
So, we all want to build good habits, break those bad ones, but sometimes it's tough, And this book, Atomic Habits, seems to have some answers about, the how and the why of all that.
Yeah, it goes beyond just, the theory. Atomic Habits gives you actual tools to use,
Practical stuff.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so one thing that caught my eye was this whole idea of atomic habits. Like these tiny changes we can make, but over time they build up to something huge.
It's true. And it all comes down to how our brains work, really. We're kind of programmed to be efficient.
To save energy.
Right? Like, why waste it? And that's where habits come in. They become automatic, good or bad.
And it's almost like we don't even realize how much they're shaping us, right? Because they're so automatic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it like wearing glasses you forget are even there. You don't even notice them anymore.
That's a good one.
That's what Clear calls the habit loop. It's got 4 steps: cue, craving, then the response, and finally the reward.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. Let's say you get stressed and bite your nails.
Yeah.
Okay, so the cue is that feeling, the stress. The craving is to get rid of that stress, right? So you bite your nails, that's the response. And the reward is, well, you feel a little less anxious for a bit.
Okay. So every time you go through that whole loop, that nail-biting habit just gets stronger and stronger.
Exactly. Like, imagine a field with a path worn down from people taking the same shortcut.
Oh, yeah. It's like that. I get it.
The cool thing is, neuroscience is showing us it's not just a metaphor,
Really?
Yeah. Like, the neural pathways in our brains, they literally get stronger each time that loop runs. Makes it tough to break those habits.
Wow. So then how do we use all this to actually change? How small do these atomic habits have to be?
Well, Clear says even a 1% improvement every day can add up to something amazing over time.
Like compound interest.
Kind of. Imagine a plane taking off from New York. If it's just slightly off course at the start, it could end up in Paris instead of London.
Whoa. So even a tiny change can have a big impact down the line. Makes sense. But where do we even begin? Most people start with goals, right?
Right. But Clear says, hold on, he actually flips that idea on its head.
Oh, interesting.
It's more about changing your identity. You got to become the kind of person who just naturally does these things, these habits.
So instead of I want to run a marathon, it's more like, what would a runner do?
Exactly.
Right.
And then you start living that out, even if it feels a little weird at first. Maybe a runner would sign up for a 5K, even if they're nervous, or they keep their shoes by the door, ready to go.
So it's about taking action that matches that identity you want, even if you don't feel like it yet.
You got it. It's kind of counterintuitive, but acting like that actually creates belief, just as much as belief leads to action. It's a cycle. Your habits shape you, and then who you are reinforces those habits.
It all connects. This is good stuff. But let's get real. How do we actually make those good habits stick? What's step 1?
Well, Clear says, first things first, you got to make those cues for your good habits, super obvious.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about how easy it is to grab your phone when you see a notification. That's an obvious cue.
Right, it's like it's calling you.
So if I want to drink more water, I'd keep a full water bottle right on my desk, easy to grab. You got it. And Clear also talks about making habits attractive. He calls it habit stacking.
Ooh, habit stacking. I like that.
You link a new habit to something you already enjoy. So after my morning coffee, I'll meditate for a minute.
Nice, because you're already doing the coffee anyway.
Exactly. You leverage that existing habit to kickstart a new one. And don't worry about making huge changes right away. Clear's got a tip for that, the 2-minute rule.
2-minute rule? What's that? Sounds almost too easy.
It is kind of simple. The idea is any new habit can be broken down into a tiny version, something that takes under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So not read for 30 minutes, but just open a book.
That's smart. It's like getting started is often the hardest part, so make it super easy to start.
Yeah, you really just want to make it so easy you can't help but do it,
Like no excuses.
Right. It reminds me of those Japanese production lines they talk about, making tiny tweaks that lead to huge gains in how efficient things are.
I like that. So all this efficiency stuff makes me wonder about bad habits. They just seem to stick around no matter what.
Oh, yeah. Those are the tough ones.
Any tips from Clear on how to break them?
Well, he says with bad habits, you got to flip the script. Don't make them obvious and easy. Make them invisible and hard to do.
Interesting. So Kind of like that story of James Ritty, the guy who invented the cash register. He figured out a way to make it almost impossible for employees to steal.
Exactly. You just add more friction, make it harder to do the thing you don't want to do.
Speaking of friction, technology doesn't always help, does it? It's like binge watching is so easy now with Netflix just playing the next episode automatically.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You almost got to work to stop watching. It's crazy.
Makes those bad habits even harder to break.
Yeah, and let's not forget about rewards. Our brains love instant gratification,
Oh, yeah. We want that dopamine hit right away.
Right. So, got to find ways to make the good habits feel rewarding right when you do them.
Like I use one of those habit tracker apps. I love seeing that streak build up.
There you go. See, those visuals that are tapping into that reward system in your brain makes you feel good, makes you want to keep going. And Clear talks about these habit contracts, too. That's another way to kind of make yourself stick to things.
Ooh, habit contracts. Tell me more about that. I like the sound of that.
Okay, so let's say you want to cut back on soda, right? You make this contract with a friend, and every time you grab a soda, you got to donate money to a cause you hate.
Now that's motivation. You definitely think twice before opening that can.
Exactly. So, to sum up, we got make good habits obvious, attractive, easy to do, and rewarding.
And flip that for the bad habits.
Right. Make those invisible, unattractive, hard to do, and maybe even a little painful.
I like it. Clear and concise. Anything else we should keep in mind?
Oh, yeah, there's more. Clear also talks about working with your natural tendencies. He calls it playing a game where the odds are in your favor. The idea is you're more likely to enjoy and stick with habits that fit your natural skills and interests.
That makes sense. So it's not about forcing yourself to be someone you're not. It's about figuring out what you already enjoy, what you're good at, and making those things part of your routine.
Exactly. So if you're a social butterfly, maybe joining a group fitness class is better for you than solo workouts, Find what lights you up and go from there.
Makes it feel less like a chore and more like something you actually want to do. I like that.
Ah.
But let's be real, even with the best plans, we're going to struggle sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There will be plateaus, setbacks, the whole 9 yards.
How does Clear handle that?
He talks about those elite athletes, one coach said the real difference between the best and everyone else is how they deal with the boredom of training.
The daily grind? It's not always exciting.
No, it's not. But those top performers, they show up day after day, even when it's not glamorous.
Consistency is key.
Right. And Clear suggests we should have systems to help with that consistency, like schedule time to think about how things are going, look at your progress, and maybe adjust what you're doing if it's not working.
So kind of like a performance review, but for your personal habits. I like that.
Yeah, and that goes back to that idea of small changes, right? You're always tweaking, always refining. It's like steering that plane we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Just making little adjustments to stay on course.
I'm seeing the connections now. This is great.
And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making those small improvements over time. Clear also talks about habit shaping, where you start super small and gradually increase the challenge.
So if I wanted to start running, I might just walk around the block a few times a week at first, then slowly increase the distance or speed as it gets easier.
Exactly. It's all about building up slowly and not getting overwhelmed. You don't want to set the bar too high at the beginning.
This is all making so much sense. It's really about taking it step by step.
It is. And, besides the practical stuff, Clear is some really interesting thoughts about, the psychology of habits, the difference between being in motion and taking action.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I think a lot of us get stuck in that planning phase. We research, we think about it, but never actually get started.
It's like they say paralysis by analysis. We overthink it and never actually take that first step.
Right. Being in motion is all about gathering info and planning, but taking action is where the real learning happens.
Right on. And sometimes we just got to jump in and figure things out as we go. It's not always going to be perfect, but that's part of the process.
Like Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try.
Exactly. And then Clear goes into how our expectations can actually mess with our experience. We're always chasing that feeling of pleasure, but often the real satisfaction comes after we've done the thing.
That's so true. Planning a vacation, sometimes the buildup is more exciting than the actual trip.
It happens. And on the flip side, sometimes the best moments are those unexpected ones. The things we didn't overthink or plan for.
It's about being present, enjoying the ride, not always focused on the next big thing.
Right. So what have we learned? It's not just about willpower. Building good habits is about understanding your brain and using that knowledge to work smarter, not harder.
I'm really starting to see that Atomic Habits is full of insights.
It is. It's about making lasting changes, not just quick fixes.
Building that solid foundation for growth, one step at a time. So before we wrap things up, what's one key takeaway you'd want our listeners to really walk away with?
I'd say, remember, lasting change is about consistency, not intensity. Keep showing up day after day and trust that those small efforts will add up over time. You got this.
It's like, what's that saying? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
That's it. We don't have to do it all at once, right?
Yeah.
Just those small steps, those atomic habits, those are what matter in the end.
They add up.
They do. And, we got to remember, we're going to have setbacks. It's going to happen. We're human, right?
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not about letting those slip-ups, completely derail us.
It's all about how you bounce back.
Exactly. It's a learning opportunity. You adjust, you keep moving.
You got to be resilient. One thing that really stuck with me is that Goldilocks rule.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
The idea that we're most motivated when we're working on stuff that's just challenging enough. Not too easy, not too hard.
Right. Think about it. If something's too easy, we get bored. Too hard, we get frustrated and quit.
Makes sense. Got to find that sweet spot.
That's where the magic happens. You're stretching yourself a little, but not so much that you want to give up.
It's like those video games that get harder as you go, right?
They keep you hooked because there's always a new challenge.
Keeps you engaged. So Clear says we should apply that to our lives too, right? Always looking for ways to push ourselves a bit.
Exactly. Don't get comfortable. Don't get stuck. Keep learning. Keep growing.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? But if it's not about hitting those big goals, how do we even know we're making progress?
Well, Clear's big on reflection, on reviewing how things are going. Like, take some time each week or at least once a month to really think about your habits.
It's like a check-in with yourself.
Yeah. Ask yourself, what's working, what's not? What can I tweak?
So it's kind of like we're scientists, right? We're experimenting, gathering data, seeing what works.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Clear talks about accountability partners, having someone to share the journey with.
Makes a big difference, right? Like having your own personal cheerleader, someone to celebrate with you and pick you up when you're down.
It does. And sometimes just knowing someone's watching, that they're aware of your goals, that can be enough to keep you going.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to let them down and you don't want to let yourself down either.
Right. It's a powerful motivator.
We've covered a lot today, really dug into this whole idea of atomic habits. I feel like I have a much better grasp on how they work now, and more importantly, how I can use this stuff to actually make positive changes.
That's what it's all about, taking that knowledge and putting it into action.
So for everyone listening, think about it. What's one tiny habit, just one atomic habit, that you can start building today? Something that gets you closer to that best version of yourself. And remember, even the smallest changes can have a huge impact over time. This deep dive has given you a roadmap. Now it's time to start the journey. Until next time, keep diving.